Hey, welcome to ToolSpecs. So today we're going to install some new brakes on my 2019 Dodge Ram 1500 Classic. Every time I change my tires from summer to winter tire and vice versa from winter to summer tire, I always inspect my brake and make sure that I can still last them for a little bit longer before they are due. Well, this time I got cut and the snow's not done melting yet, and the brakes are too low, they're starting to grind, so I have to change them. The brakes that we're going to install today are the Max Advance brake. You can find them on Amazon. I will have a link in the description. Now this is going to be a two-part video. In the first part, we're going to install the front brake, and then the second part, we're going to install the rear brakes. The brake model that we're using for this video is the Elite. The pads are ceramic, and the rotors are drilled and slotted, and they have that black coating, the anti-rust coating on them. This kit includes a pair of gloves to do your work, the front brake, the model number is M1084. So the larger one, that's for your front brake. They're also a little bit thicker. The kit comes with a little bit of grease to put on your brake and all the clips that you're going to need to install them. In the second box, this is your rear brake. That's the model number M898. So those have different clips to hold them into your caliper. Your brake pad, they're also ceramic, and you have a little bit of grease. We also have our rear rotors, which is model number SCB0524. The rear brakes, you have your parking brake that sits inside. The front rotor model number is the SCB0523. Those ones are not as deep because there's no parking brake in them. The only thing that's not included in the kit is the slider pins. So the front slider pin is model number 14166, and it comes with the boat. There's already Loctite, red Loctite on them, and the sliders. I like to replace those all the time because they get pitted, and if they jam into your caliper that's holding your brake pad, then your brakes are gonna wear down all funny. The rear brakes slider pins are the H5066. So those ones come with the bushing and the pins. For a small cost of the slider pin kit, which is what, $10 to $15 each, it's not worth it to rescue your brake and have your brake pads wear down all crooked. Let's start this brake job. So if you never jack up your truck before, the best place is on your frame rail. Right here on either side of the bracket. Now you're gonna have to use your jack, but also a jack stand to make it safe. So if you put your jack on one side and then your jack stand onto the other side, this is gonna be the best spot and the most solid to raise your truck. Now the one thing that I recommend is before you're done jack it up the tire off the ground, it's better to loose up your wheel nuts right now. It's gonna be way easier on you. So for the lock nut and the summer nut, you actually need a 7/8 socket, and for the winter nut for a metal rim, this is actually a 13/16 socket. Now you can use your torque wrench to loose up those. Usually what you want to do is actually crank it up so it's way higher than the torque that those click at. Usually you don't want to pass the click and still put lots more pressure. So as long as you adjust it really high, you're going to be good. Now the tire's probably going to be pretty tough on this, so what you want to do is just kick the top and then it should break it loose. Now the first thing that we're going to do is remove those rings here. Those are just installed by factory. I usually put them back on anyway because it just makes it easier to hold the rotor in place. They're installed on the assembly line so that before they slam all the brakes together, the rotors don't flap around and fall on the ground. So, but it is making it way easier to put your caliper with your brake pad after. So I reuse them. You can throw them out if you want to. You can grab a screwdriver and push them on the side to try to make them turn, or you can grab a pair of pliers like this and then just start twisting it. If you get really pissed off, you can just break them. Now, before we go any further with this, we're going to pop our hood and we're going to open a reservoir for brake fluid. Now, the brake fluid is low, but this is just because our brake pads are worn. As we push the brake cylinders back in order to put our new brake pad, then the brake fluid is going to raise back up. Now, you can turn your wheel to have better access to your brake component. We're going to remove both of the caliper and the bracket for the caliper separately because I want to have access to the sliders and replace them. Now, you can remove it as a whole assembly if you wanted to. To have access to this bolt, it's going to be either a 13 mil socket or a 1/2 inch. It's usually a 1/2 inch, but the 1/2 inch feels a little bit tight if there's any rust on the bolt, so 13 mil works way better. You might have to grab the other side of the bolt here with a pair of vice grip because that might turn on you when you're loosening those up. You could use a wrench, but most wrenches are going to be too thick. One thing that you can do now is use a big screwdriver or like a flat screwdriver or a little pry bar and push your cylinder back in a little bit. Now be careful, there's a rubber boot. You don't want to poke a hole through that or it's going to rust underneath here and your cylinder won't be able to move freely. You might need a new caliper if you do that. You don't need to bring them all the way back in because we'll do that after in a safer way. We're just gonna set our caliper right here onto our swing arm. Now be careful with the hose here, and you don't want to let it hang because you don't want to put any pressure on this or have a chance of breaking or damaging the hose on the side. Let's remove the rest of the bracket and the brake pads. So as you can see here, this brake pad is pretty much done. They don't have too much meat left on this thing. It wasn't unsealed yet, but it wasn't too far from it. The outside one was a little bit better, but still very thin too. Okay, so now we're going to remove this bracket. For this, I'm using a 21 millimeter. Now there's nothing left that's holding the rotor on. There's a little bit of rust around, so it doesn't flap around. So we're just gonna grab a mallet and give it a couple knock. There we go. Now, if you're thinking about reusing your roller because you're doing a hub assembly, well, first of all, I would change them anyway if you're going that far. But if you need to reuse them, just be careful, because using a mallet or hammer on the side of it is going to have a chance to warp them a little bit. And then when you press on the brake pedal, you're gonna feel a shake like this. And this is due to a warp rotor that's kicking your brake in and out really quick as you're driving and you're pressing on the brake. So now there's a few things that we're going to do to get ready for the reassembly. So first we're going to clean the face right here in order to be able to put our roller back on. Now you can just grab a screwdriver. We just want to take a little bit of the surface rust off. It doesn't need to be perfect. Just quickly. You can also grab some sandpaper and then pass it like this to make it go against the surface and clean it better. So that's good enough. Now what we're going to do is we're going to grab some handsaws. Everything is frozen. Anyway, we're gonna try to put a little bit of handsaws on the surface. Make sure you don't have no build up on the face where this is mounted to for the bracket here. Now this bracket, we can remove those clips for brake pad from it. And then just make sure that the surface of this bracket, right in those groove where your brake pad are gonna be sitting, that this actually is rust free. So you might pass a little pick or screwdriver, or if you have some power tools and you can put pads like this in there, so you can pass this on here. Those seems pretty good. I usually put, my little trick here is I usually put a little bit of dielectric grease, or the grease that comes with the brake pads. I'll put that little layer in here, just barely a little nab on the finger, and pass it in here, and usually it keeps everything from rusting. Make sure that you grab all of the angles, so make sure that you do each side and the bottom. Our next step that we're going to do is we're actually going to twist those the sliders. As you can see, they're moving very good. So if you want to keep them like this, if they're moving good like that, you can. Now make sure that when you're twisting those, get them to come off. Hold the boot, because if you twist the boot and it rips, you're gonna have moisture getting in here, or dirt, and you're going to end up having to replace your brake shoes earlier. Actually, this is excellent. I still have lots of grease on there. There's actually no pitting at all. So we're just going to put this right back in. Now, you see that there's a little bit of, it's a little bit bigger here, and there's a groove just behind the nut. So that have to get stuck in the edge of the boot here. So we're going to pinch the boot like this and just give it a twist until it goes in. Now make sure that you're burping the air out of this. So make sure that you can go all the way in and there's no leak. It doesn't try to do a big hair bubble into this part. Now we're gonna look at this one. Now if this one is damaged, then we're just gonna remove both of them and replace both of them for new. If it's not damaged, then I'm just going to keep them in here and keep the slider for the next brake job. Okay, so now it is going to come apart. But if it wasn't going to come apart, and even by holding it like this you couldn't twist it, then I would grab a little flat screwdriver and then start prying in between the washer here and the boot to try to free it up and break it loose. There, I'll just do it. Let's try to free it up and break it loose from this washer. So you would just move it like this. After it's break loose all the way around, then you would be able to just grab it now and twist it, and it will come out. Now you can buy a new one of those boots if you need to, and even the assembly that goes all the way inside, or you can just buy the whole bracket. So let's see what it looks like. This is also very good. No pitting, nothing like this. So we're just going to reuse this. If you wanted to, you can grab a little bit of grease and put more grease in there. I find though that if there is too much grease, or you can wipe it clean and then put a new layer of grease, but this looks good. Doesn't look like there's any buildup of anything in there, and the grease doesn't look like there's water moisture on there. If you had water and moisture, then you would actually be able to tell that the grease wouldn't be like this. It would be a little bit, I guess, more watery. Well, you can see water and grease usually. So now we're just going to put our boot back in. I find that if you put too much grease, what's going to happen is that it's going to kind of airlock in here. You're going to have trouble to push your pin all the way. So that's why I'm not adding any more grease. Now the next thing that we're going to do is we're going to grab our caliper. Now you see all the pistons are sticking out like this. So what you want to do is you want to grab your old brake pad. I'm going to set it in here. And then what we're going to do is actually grab a C-clamp. And we're going to set it into the back of our caliper and onto the back of the caliper like this here. And then we're pushing against the brake pad. And that's going to bring everything back in nice and smooth so that we actually don't damage any of the piston. Now, if you forget to open the cap for your reservoir, your oil reservoir for your brake, then when you're trying to bring the pistons back in, it's going to be very hard to do. So you might have to, if it goes like this one's going a little bit more than that one right now. Sometimes they don't go quite even. So you just have to loose up your C-clamp and put it onto the other side. Now you have to remember we're forcing against hydraulic pressure into those pistons. So you kind of have to put some pressure on there with the C-clamp, but give them time to go by themselves. Doesn't matter if you keep rushing and trying to compress them faster, they're just gonna compress so fast. So what you're gonna end up seeing at the end is your piston is gonna be pretty much flush with the rubber boot that's around them. As soon as this is like this, don't force it more. You're pretty much at the bottom, and you're going to have enough space to put your shoes back on, or your brake pads back on. Okay, so now our caliper is ready for brake pads. All we have to do now is remount this bracket first. While you had this apart though, one thing that I didn't do because I didn't see no leak or nothing like that, but you always want to inspect your piston. So you're going to inspect the boot to make sure it's not damaged or cracked. If it's damaged or cracked, or you see any oil leaking from anywhere, then you need to replace the caliper. Now, one thing that we're going to do is we're going to grab the little bit of grease that came with our brake, and we're going to put the little tab of grease, like I said, that you should do, so that everything moves freely in here. And it helps to keep a little bit of the rust away too. Now, that doesn't need to be perfect. The only thing that's important here is that you don't put too much, because you don't want any of this to actually leak onto your rotor. So just a little smear, just so that there's a little coat of grease on there. So just like this here. And now what we're going to do is put the roller on, just like so. Now if you have the clips, it's your choice if you want to put them on or you don't want to. Or you just put them with the little tab pointing outwards, and then you can just push them really quick and easy. And then like that, you can make sure that your roller is all the way in and it won't move on you. It's going to make the job easier to put everything together. Okay. So now that we put the little tab of grease in here, we're ready for the put that bracket back in. On this on those both, I would put a little bit of Loctite. Now I didn't have blue Loctite, so I'm using red Loctite. But if you're using red Loctite, make sure you don't put too much of it. Now the bracket, remember, those both goes towards the inside of your truck. Here are the sliders. And the bracket is the outside of the bracket have the same shape than the outside of your roller, right? So this is how it goes. We're just gonna put those both as tight as we can with just a ratchet like this. It's gonna be good enough. You can probably find a torque for it. I never use torque for that. So now if you want more leverage, you can always use your knee underneath. And then make sure that you pull as much as you can. And it should be enough. Won't go nowhere. Now that we're done with that, we're gonna start putting our brake pads back on. So for our brake pad, first we need to put those little metal tab at the end here. So those are actually going to be pointing so that this is towards the outside of them where the metal plate is. This is your wear area. So you want them like this. And what that plate does, when your cylinder is pushing your brake against your rotor, it's actually putting a little bit of pressure on those clips, and those are acting as a return spring. So when you're taking your foot off the brake, then it did just move back onto this bracket here to be a little bit away from your rotor. We already put some grease on here earlier, so we don't have to worry about it. Now I can just put our brake pad in. And just like the bracket, the brake pad actually go on the same size than the rotor. See what I mean about it being springy? Now, if it's springy like this, it's perfect. See how the bottom is not as springy, so if I want to, I can take this off. We can see if we have a little piece of rust in here, so we can scrape it again. I don't think there's any buildup of anything on this one. I think what's happening, it could use a little bit more grease in here. Just on the side, so it's actually a little bit more springy. Yeah, that fixed it right there. So now we're ready to put our caliper back in. Before we put the caliper back in, one thing that you want to do is actually on your cylinder and on those three contact spots, what we want to do is put a little bit of grease, just like what we did for the bracket. And it's gonna help with brake noise, so you don't have the the little squealing when you're driving around. By just having a little bit of grease there, it's gonna fix all of that issue. Okay, now we can put the caliper back on. Make sure that you're not twisting this line. Make sure we're gonna put the bottom side on first, and then after that we're going to wiggle it and work our way in to do the top side. Now you might have to push a little bit on your slider in order to make it slide on here. You might take a couple of wiggle and a couple little tap. Okay. There you go. Now we just have to put our bolt back on. Because we're using the same sliders, then we're going to reuse the same bolt. Those bolts usually come with a little bit of red Loctite on there. So this is what we're going to do again. Now, like I always keep your eyes open. Doesn't matter which job you're doing, because you never know. You want to catch stuff early before you have breakdowns, right? So, as I'm explaining everything and as I'm doing this brake job here, I already inspected this boot over there, the CV shaft boot, for cracks. I also look for the swing arms bushing. I looked at my linkage here. I looked at my shock absorber to see that there's no leaks. I looked at the spring to make sure that there wasn't crack. Now there's a little bit of paint chipping out of it, but there's nothing crack on there. I already looked at all of this. I looked at the bushing here for the linkage. I look at the bushing here. So I did all of this as I'm explaining, but this is just the mechanic way, right? Like I'm used to, You don't just concentrate on what you're doing. You're exploring everything else. Try to make sure everything is good. All right. Anyway, back to our brake jobs. So now I have the bolt all the way in here. We're going to put our 13 mil socket back on and tighten those bolts. Now those sliders are nice and free, so they might want to turn on me. So we're going to have to see if they're turning too much on me. Then I'm going to have to use the vice grip. Now those bolts, you want them tight, but don't put them too tight, right? Look at the size of them. You don't want to snap them. But if you snap them, then you just have to replace the pins and it's going to be good. You know, when I say pins, I mean the slider pins. Yeah, so they're actually getting tight and they're not, the inside, the sliders are not turning, so we're good here. Okay, so our brake's back on. Everything is on. Everything is nice and secure. So now just put your wheel back straight so it's easier to put your tire back on. What I do here to make it easier on myself and to make sure that everything stays straight is I use my foot at the bottom here in order to hold the bottom of the tire so it doesn't swing back. And then like that, I'm able to start my wheel nuts. I'm gonna start the wheel nuts until they all touch. Now I got two. I got them on the opposite side. I don't need my foot there in order to hold anything. The reason why I don't use the gun on this is because those are pretty small. They're fragile a little bit. If you end up using an impact gun, if they're just chrome plated, then you gotta chip the chrome. Those are good. They don't chip, but so I bought some good quality one. But what happened? No, it's when they get old. When they get older, they might start twisting, and if they start twisting, then it's gonna start having the tread pattern not straight on you, and you're gonna have some spot where it's jamming up. Well, if you have a spot that's jamming up, it could start ripping some of the treads when you're taking them off or putting them back on. So this is why I don't use the end pack on my tire like this. If I use the end pack, it's just going to be to speed things up, to speed it up to make it touch, or after they're cracked loose, just speed it up to remove them. But other than that, I don't use the end pack. So we're going to set our torque wrench at 140. So we set our torque wrench at 140. Now, because the tire is not touching the ground, we're not going to be able to go to 140 right away because the tire is going to start spinning. But what we want to do is just start sucking in the tire a little bit. Just put your wheel nut on until it starts spinning the tire like this. And then after that, we're just going to lower the truck until the tire just barely touch the ground. And then that's going to stop it from being able to spin. I'm doing a star pattern at this, right? So you do your bottom or whatever, go opposite all the time as you're putting everything in. And what it does is it makes sure that it sucks in your rim against your hub and your rotor nice and straight, so it doesn't end up being crooked a little bit, because if it's crooked, it's gonna get loose. And that's the other thing why I like to have the tire off the ground as I'm bringing the wheel nuts in a little bit like this. It's so that everything is nice and loose and there's no restriction for your tire to be able to go against for your rim to go against and set in place where it's supposed to be. Now we're just going to remove our jack stand and lower our truck for the tire to touch. You can see now there's a little bit of pressure on there. Now we're ready to torque everything. The torque wrench, you will only click if you're using the handle. So make sure that your end is on the handle when you're doing it. Usually you want to retorque your wheel 100 kilometer after you're done putting it on. So now I did that. The way I'm thinking it's I always make sure that everything is torqued properly. So after I'm done this, I did the star pattern. I want to make sure that I didn't miss anything by accident. So this is just me, but I rather double check and go all the way around one by one. I don't do the star pattern so that's not getting confusing. I just go all the way around because everything is slick anyway. And then like that, you know that everything has been done. And if you miss one, then you can just torque it. You don't have to redo the whole thing. So now I just have to do the other side. This side, the brake job is done. The other side is exactly the same, so I'm not gonna show that to you. Now don't forget, when you're done your brake job, close that cap here. This is why I'm leaving the hood open, so I don't forget about it. So close the cap, and then, well, not crooked like this. All right, so close the cap, make sure it's closed, and then you're gonna press your brake pedal. Start your truck, press your brake pedal a couple times, just to make sure that your brakes are actually touching the roller before you go for a drive. Okay, so I'll do the other side, and then I'll bring you guys back, and then I'm going to show you how to break in your brakes after, because you're supposed to remove the coating. There's a special way to do it. Okay, so it's very important after you do your brake job. Doesn't matter which kind of brake you've been using, you break them in after to make sure everything is set properly. If you have a special coating on your brake rotor, it's even more important because you want to remove the coating onto the surface where the brake pad meet your rotor. And because it's going to be very slippery surface at the beginning, and you want it to be sealed onto your pad so that it actually grab as best as it can. So what we have to do now is start driving, bring your vehicle about 60 kilometers an hour, and then you want to slow it down after that as you're braking, to go down to maybe 10 to 20 kilometers an hour. And what's going to happen at the beginning, what's going to happen is you're going to raise the temperature of your brake nice and slow. You want to do that 6 to 10 times. Now, if you're going into a subdivision, you might want to put your 4 ways on, because you're going to end up braking every 2 seconds. And if cars are following you, they have no clue what you're up to. So I'm going to a subdivision here, but I'm going to a spot where it's actually not too busy. So after we're done our 10 smooth braking, I guess you can call that, because you're not going too fast, then what we're going to do is start going a little bit faster and way more aggressive with our brakes. So for this, I need to find a spot where I can accelerate faster. So we're going to make it go more like 80 kilometers an hour and then try to brake really quickly, just so that we're actually scraping all of that coating on our brakes. So we did about the 6 brake. Right now, I'm gonna put my 4-ways on. There's nobody following me, but it's better be safe than sorry. And then we're going to start braking really aggressively and then accelerate. You want to try to don't drag that for too long, so you want to try to do that as fast as you can and really have the temperature of your brake going way high so that you can actually make sure that you're burning out of that coating. And just like the smooth braking, you do not want to stop. And it's especially important now that we're actually raising our temperature as high as we can. We don't want to stop with our brake because we don't want to give them any chance of cooling down. Now I'm out of road here and there's a light, so I'm going to turn into the street and then we're going to do the same thing again. Now, as you're doing this, you're going to start smelling brakes. Smelling brakes, and it's going to smell a little bit terrible actually, because you're going to smell the burning of the coating that's on your brake at the same time. Starting to have some people following me, so now they're going to wonder what I'm up to. We're pretty much done now. It's not smelling anymore. Coating, if there's any coating left, the rest of it is gonna burn during the normal driving. But I could tell already that it's starting to be a way more grabby and aggressive. So after you're done breaking your brake, then what you're going to want to do is to drive for about 5 minutes with minimal braking. A nice and smooth brake if you have to brake, just so that like that you're going to let your brake be able to cool down. The last thing that you want to do right now is to go and park your car without cooling down your brakes first, because we raised the temperature of the brake too high and it might cause your rotor to warp a little bit. Now, the chance that this will happen and your rotor warp is really small, but we don't want to take any chance after we've been doing all of this work, right? Hopefully you like the video. So we get the front brakes done together. Now, they're braking, no problem. I can wait until I do my back one. The grinding noise is done because it was coming from the front anyway. So I'm probably going to wait until all of the snow's melting, and then after that, when it's warmer, I'll do the rear one. So if by the time you're watching this video I have the rear one done. I'm gonna post the link for that video. In the meantime, if that video is not up, then maybe you want to see how to replace the glass on your side mirror. That video is pretty popular. People like it. Or maybe you're more into power tool reviews or tool reviews. So I got lots of those too. All right. So anyway, we'll see you in the next video. Cheers. Thanks for watching.